Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Hager. This is their part number RC1749, US10A, lacquered antique bronze, 4x4 quarter-inch radius hinge, full mortise, residential weight, plain bearing, steel-based, non-removable pin. Cool, let's take a look at see what this hinge is. By the way, when you purchase these, they're packaged in certain quantities. These are currently 2 per box, although that may change in time. But nonetheless, here's what this hinge is. So it's an RC1749. The RC is going to certainly tell us radiused corner. This RC1749 is a quarter-inch radius corner. Now, where that comes from is when the door manufacturer is building the door and frame and prepping it for the hardware, they're literally routing it with a half-inch diameter bit, is where that quarter-inch radius comes from. You'll see 5/8 radius. Yes, they have an 1.25 inch wide bit. The 5/8 radius are nice because for the door manufacturer, having made doors in the past, when you come with a half-inch router, that's your prep. When you do a 5/8 radius with a 1.25 inch wide bit, done. So you'll see 5/8 radius because the time to manufacture is so much less, so shortened because of the multiple tool paths are eliminated. Anyway, quarter-inch radius. 1749 is going to tell us that it is a template pattern on the screw holes. It's a location of the screw holes that has been termed using the word template. Template can be used to tell us that we want to talk about a template, a technical drawing, a dimensional drawing. It could also be a reference to a standard by which people have come together and said, this is the standard location for these holes, and we're going to call it the template location. Okay? That's where that is. It also tells us, RC1749, that this hinge is a residential weight. And in the world of hinges, there's residential weight, there's standard weight, and then there's heavy weight. This is a residential weight. They don't say lightweight, but it would be considered the lightest of the three. Should be 87 thousandths or 85 thousandths. According to my caliper, it's 0.088, so that's pretty good in terms of manufacturing tolerance. 0.088, and that could be partially the thickness of just the fact that this leaf is probably not absolutely straight, etc. Okay, so that's RC1749. It also means that it's a full mortise hinge, and that's buried down in the part number. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaves here, that when the leaves are brought parallel, the door and frame are meant to be mortised. It's meant to be mortised to the edge of the door and frame, so you maintain that typical margin. This also means that the hinge is made of steel. If the hinge was non-ferrous, it would likely have a different part number, but not always. Sometimes the finish will tell us it's different. But this is certainly a steel-based hinge. It's 5-knuckle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's self-explanatory. It's also plain bearing, meaning between these knuckles there are no bearing packets. That would not be ideal in any instance when you have available to you an RC BB1749. That would be preferable because eventually it will be noticed that the wear pattern between the knuckles of a plain bearing hinge will be measurable. The gaps between these hinge knuckles will be noticeable and will ultimately affect the operation of the door. In a residential application, it will take 20 years for that to happen, or maybe 15. But on a busy door, like the door down to the basement where all the kids go, you know, that sort of thing, you will certainly notice that wear pattern. Really what happens when you have a wear pattern on a hinge is the door starts to sag, and then the latch doesn't, the latch bolt doesn't engage in the strike, and now it's not latching correctly, maybe it's not locking correctly. And the only time I think you would really use a non-ball bearing hinge is when economy was the most important thing. There is a price difference, but if it was my house, you know, especially if you have solid core doors, absolutely use ball bearing. If they're all hollow core, I'd probably only stick them on the really busy doors, but you will notice it, that's for sure. That is the, that's for sure, it's advantageous. Now, this hinge, what else can we derive out of the part number? Nothing. I'm sure I'm missing something, but this is a non-removable pin, which is even worse for it not being ball bearing. There's a set screw there that's been drilled and tapped into this knuckle. Inside the pin, on the pin, is a groove that's been cut so that when the pin is seated down and you tighten that set screw, the set screw is going to rest inside of that groove. That's going to all but eliminate the possibility of pulling that pin out. Is it impossible? No. Are you going to get the pin out? No. It's not the way you're going to get in. Where would you use this? On any door where someone had access to the pin side or the barrel side and you wanted to make sure they couldn't just easily drive that out. It'll come out if you are going to make it come out. And if it's high security, you're going to go a step beyond non-removable pin or NRP with security studs. But non-removable pin, and you can't see that, you can't get to that head of that screw at all from the outside. You can see the screw, but you're not going to get the tool in there because you don't have enough clearance. It's considered industry standard as a security measure to prevent someone from driving the pin out. Okay. Where will you use it? On an outside door swinging out, or a door that you want to prevent someone from tapping the pins off. In residential applications, it could be very typical that there is a closet that you will keep things in that you want to keep people out. And it doesn't take a lot of knowledge to know you can tap those pins out, pull that door off, get inside, put it all back, and really no one knows that there's been any unauthorized entry. So you'll see it used in those applications. If you're storing, if you have a gun safe, if you have private sort of possessions, if you have things of value, you'll certainly want to do that, would be my guess. Okay. Now this is made in all of the common finishes from the Hager. This is antique bronze. This is an antique bronze that has been lacquered. That is the US10A. US10B is an oil rubbed bronze without any lacquer, so it's oiled. It's an acid type process, relatively complicated, without a lacquer. But if you want an antique bronze that will have a lacquer, meaning that the finish will be expected, and they had a little bit of overspray here on this hinge leaf. If you want to have a antique finish on a hinge that will be stable, you're going to put a lacquer on it. The lacquer, lacquer on hardware will fatigue and fail eventually. But that's really when you're touching the hardware. You're never going to touch a hinge, really. Now, the extended information below tells us that they're priced per hinge, full mortise, template, steel hinge with a steel pin, 85 thousandths gauge with a pin diameter of 0.234. That's nice to know in case you want to know the size of the pin diameter. They're reversible. I don't see why you would have to reverse them. That door can swing either direction. I don't see why you would do that. Left-hand door, right-hand door, button tip up, this area down below. The logo is in the proper orientation. Okay, little Hager logo that's there. 1/4 inch radius, removable pin, non-removable pin available, that's what this is. Residential weight, plain bearing, 5 knuckle, 8 holes on the screws. And speaking of the screws, the screw holes, screws are included. You'll get all machine and all wood screws with this. No, you won't. You're going to get all machine and half wood. You're going to get 8 machine screws and 4 wood screws. If you have need for a particular arrangement of screws, specify that at the time of order. Because we want to be sure that you get the right screws, because you're not going to the lumber yard and picking up a US10A finish screw. AMS, all metal screws. AWS, all wood screws. Indicate in the comment field. I want half this, all this, or all this. And then it'll be on Hager to make sure they ship it correctly. There is a link below this video to a document called Template. That's a technical drawing reference now, where we're going to show you where these holes are going to be located so that you can determine if it's going to meet your requirements. If you're changing hinges out, you know, you want to know where the holes are located. I've swapped hinges out in the past where I knew up front I was going to have to dowel those drill the holes out, dowel them, glue, dowel them, route them, mortise them with my router, flush, re-drill with my VIX bit, V-I-X. Look up VIX bit if you want a great tool for quickly pre-drilling holes, and then put new screws in. That may be okay for me to do that work, but you might say, I don't even own a screwdriver. Well, facetiously, I mean, you may not want to do that sort of labor. So that template will allow you to review up beforehand before you purchase the stuff if the hole locations are going to be where they need to be, because it's very possible that they won't be. That's why you would check. There's also a link to a document called Product Catalog, which is going to show you a whole mess of Hager residential hinges. Really what you're getting into on all this stuff is a amazing variety of how hinges are different in terms of their hole location and their corner treatment. So you can see from there that there's a lot of different ones. The point is that if you're not sure which it is, reach out to us or get the part number, populate that back into the website, and pull up its template and verify that against what you have. This is an RC1749. Even that image shown is incorrect. They call it a template hole pattern, but they have a staggered pattern for the screw holes on this hinge in that product catalog. Typographical errors are not impossible from anyone, but they do have one there, that's for sure. I do not see a BB version of this, however. Now, what you would do if you wanted ball bearing, you would simply order the RCBB 1279. It's really the same hinge, except that it's not 85 thousandths thick. It's 130 thousandths thick. Okay, a standard weight hinge. Okay, so the size. This is a 4x4. That means it's 4-inch tall and 4-inch wide. And what that means is that it's 4-inch tall. The height is the first dimension on a hinge. So a door is this wide by this tall, but a hinge is this tall by this wide. It's important to understand that distinction because you can really get yourself into trouble if you are like, well, give me a 5 by 4.5 or a 4.5 by 5. A 5 by 4.5 and a 4.5 by 5 are not the same hinge at all because we're defining the height as the first dimension. I did a project many, many, many years ago where the spec called out 5 by 4.5 inch hinges. These were on 3'6" or 4-foot doors. I thought they wanted a wide throw hinge, so I sent them 4.5 by 5s. And they said, yeah, the wide throw hinge, I guess that's okay. We didn't need it. But the spec called out for 5-inch hinges. And I said, well, that's what I sent you. Because I was so new, I thought the hinge ran width and then height. The point of the matter is, are you going to bump into it in your life? Probably not. But if you're in construction, you sure will. Aluminum storefront is very commonly 4.5 by 4. Anything wide throw is going to be something by greater than. You could also have something by less than, like a 4 by 3.5. That hinge is not unheard of. So be mindful that the height is the first dimension. Not to really beleaguer that point, but you know, even people who make a living selling hardware can make that mistake. I don't make that mistake anymore, though. So there is, below this video, a link to the manufacturer's website where you can pull up all things Hager and their catalog, a link to their website. I'm partial to Hager, and it's because I'm probably because I'm familiar with their product line. I appreciate the fact that Hager continues to evolve their product line. I can tell you that Hager enjoys a very loyal client base. I have customers that will say, oh, I need these hinges. Well, it's 3 weeks. There's an alternate if you want something on a faster lead time. No, I'll wait for the Hager. That's very typical and common. Their customer service is good. Their tech support is good. Hager's been in business since basically the Mexican-American War. Really, definitely pre-bellum, if that's the proper way to say prior to the Civil War. Definitely pre-bellum. And that's a lineage that they're proud of. And there are people that work at Hager, lots of them that have the Hager last name. And I don't know how many generations they're into now. It's probably 7 would be my guess. And that's a fact that they're quite proud of, as I might have represent them. If you have any questions on the Hager, RC1749, 4x4, 10A, NRP, or any other Hager product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.